My printer has a mind of its own. It's doing something on its own. I don't know if you can hear it. Anyways. Okay, so good morning, everyone. We are recording now. So just want to make one quick comment regarding the theorem that we discussed in the last lecture, Berge's theorem, which says that a matching is maximum if and only if there is no augmenting path with respect to that matching, right? I just want to make one quick comment, which is that if you have a single edge in the graph, so M is a matching, let's say it is, these are the M edges. But if you have a single edge in the graph that is not in M, in fact, both the ends are M exposed. U and V are both M exposed. Then note that this edge satisfies the definition of an M augmenting path. It is an alternating path with respect to the matching M. It's just one edge. And both the ends of the path are M exposed, right? So this is an M augmenting path. Okay, just want to point out this smallest example of an M augmenting path in case it wasn't obvious that this should be an M augmenting path. Okay, good. So this takes care of the case when M is not a maximal matching. Then there will be at least some edge which is not in M and you can add it to M. And another way to look at it is an M augmenting path. So you can take the symmetric difference with M and get a bigger matching. Okay, good. So are there any questions or concerns pertaining to anything we have covered so far in matchings? Okay, so hopefully you all were able to figure out this last detail, why there is an M augmenting path in the graph induced by M symmetric difference N, the edges in this set. Okay, good. So if there are no questions, let's move on to bipartite matchings. Okay. All right. So let's start with a simple question. Okay. So perhaps my approach is influenced by my own research. I work in perfect matchings of a graph. So I tend to focus on perfect matchings. And then from there, I go to maximum matchings. Okay. So I tend to find perfect matchings more appealing. So we can start with the following question. Under what circumstances does a bipartite graph not have a perfect matching? So what are some obvious sufficient conditions for a bipartite graph to not have a perfect matching? Okay, before we go there, let me introduce one quick notation. So for a bipartite graph with given color classes, notice that if a bipartite graph is connected, then the color classes are determined by the graph up to relabeling, right? So one class is the black colored vertice is X and the white colored vertice is Y, right? If a bipartite graph is not connected, then you can have different bipartitions. That is easy to see. But we won't care about that. We will just use the notation G, X, Y to indicate that we are given a bipartition, right? If that bothers you, just assume that the graph is connected. And then the bipartition is anyways uniquely determined up to relabeling. Okay. So this is the notation for a bipartite graph with specified color classes X and Y. The terminology color classes inspired by the fact that the graph is two colorable. two vertex colorable. Okay, so supposing I have a bipartite graph G x comma y. Under what conditions can I immediately say that, hey, this graph doesn't have a perfect matching? Anybody? Um, So Anand has an answer, which is slightly more non-trivial than the first answer I'm looking for. So can you give me something simpler before we go to something more complex? Let's rule out the simpler things. Can you give me something simpler? What must be satisfied by x and y for the graph to have a perfect matching?
The cardinality of x and y equal to same.
Okay. So in other words, if x is not equal to y, then clearly the graph does not have a perfect matching, right? Because every vertex of x has to be matched with a vertex of y, and therefore they must be the same size, x and y. Okay, so that's the first condition. Now Anand has an answer for any subset x of x. The total number of edges from all vertices of s to y is less than s. Let me see if I can make an example. So if I take a subset S of X, 1, 2, 3, and you're saying that the total number of edges from all vertices of S to Y is less than S. Okay. Okay. So supposing from these three vertices, I have just two edges going like this. Okay. Then it seems to be a problem, right? Because then where is this vertex going to be matched? Oh, okay, okay. I've shared the screen. I was worried for a moment. Okay, so where do you match this last vertex? But actually, does the number of edges really matter? What if I have more edges? So Anand, what if I have more edges? Is it really the number of edges you are concerned about, or is it something else? What if my graph looks like this? The number of neighbors, Arnav. Yeah, right. Okay, size of image. Okay, so I'll go with number of neighbors, sticking to more graph theoretic terminology. So supposing your graph looks like this, I don't know, something like this. I tend to draw graphs that are prettier looking. So let me make this drawing. Supposing my graph looks like this. Okay. Then the problem is that you have a set S and the number of neighbors of S is fewer than S. And that is a problem because you have to match every vertex in S with some neighbor of S, which means that the number of vertices in the neighborhood of S should be at least as many as the cardinality of S for there to be a perfect matching, right? In other words, if there exists a set S such that the number of neighbors is strictly less than the number of vertices in S, then you can conclude that the graph does not have a perfect matching. Right? Does everybody agree? Right. So these are clearly sufficient conditions for the graph to not have a perfect matching. Okay. Turns out they're actually necessary and sufficient. Okay. So that result, one of the most fundamental results in matching theory, is called Hall's theorem. Let me see what the number is. It's corollary 16.5 in the text. Okay. A bipartite graph G x y has a perfect matching if and only if x and y are of equal cardinality and for every single subset of X, the neighborhood of X has at least, sorry, the neighborhood of S has at least as many vertices as S. Okay. You might ask, why don't we care about the subsets of Y? Well, observe that it is symmetric. If you have a subset S whose neighborhood is smaller, then look on the other side and you will find a set T whose neighborhood is again smaller than T. Okay, you can just do some simple arithmetic and see that this is symmetric. So you don't need to include both subsets of X and subsets of Y. Okay. Is the content of the result clear? Right. So it's saying that if all of the subsets satisfy this condition, then your graph is going to have a perfect matching. Right. That's the non-trivial part to prove. Right. But as you can see, we are not going to prove this result. We are going to infer it as a consequence of a more general result. Right. Which is why we are going to call it a corollary. So the slightly more general way of looking at it is, rather than looking for a perfect matching, we are going to look for a matching that saturates all the vertices of the set X. Okay, so we are going to slightly, okay, so a bit more general question. When does a bipartite graph G, X, Y have a matching that saturates X? In other words, saturates all vertices in X. Okay. So rather than looking for a perfect matching, which is a matching that saturates both X and Y, we are just going to focus on one of the sides. Right. So clearly, if you want to saturate X, then Y must have at least as many vertices as X. Okay. Another way to look at it is the neighborhood of X should have at least as many vertices as the cardinality of X. And that implies that Y must have at least as many vertices as X. Right? Okay. So it turns out that we can get exactly the same kind of result. So in fact, this is also often called Hall's theorem. I think Hall had actually proved this theorem. So a bipartite graph G, X, Y has a matching which saturates every vertex in X. Oh, sorry, maybe I'll just use a terminology, which saturates X if and only if for each subset of X, the neighborhood of S is at least as big as the size of S. Okay, great. Okay, good. So the necessity is clear, right? For the graph to have such a matching, it must be true that the neighborhood is at least as big as the size of the set for every such set, right? So the forward direction, which is necessity, if you phrase the question differently, this is easy. And we need to show the sufficiency. We need to argue that whenever this condition holds, the graph has a matching that saturates X. Okay? We will prove the contrapositive. We will prove that if the graph does not have a matching that saturates X, then you can find a set which defies this condition. Okay? So let Gxy be a bipartite graph that does not have a matching that saturates X. Okay? Our goal is to show the existence of a deficient set. And what I mean by a deficient set is in X. So it's a subset of the vertices such that its neighborhood is too small. Okay? Is everybody with me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so how do we go about this? How do we show the existence of a deficient set? We have a, we know that the graph does not have a matching that saturates X. Okay. And we want to find this deficient set. So there are two main approaches. Both of them are really same sides, two sides of the same coin. You can either do it algorithmically, or you can not worry about the algorithmic component and just show the existence. But both of them are not too different from each other. So I'll probably go through the non-algorithmic approach and then tell you how the algorithmic approach works, right? But I won't spend too much time on it, just to get a bit more intuition about the topic. So let's take a maximum matching of the graph. Okay, so it will saturate some number of vertices of X, but it will not saturate all the vertices of X, right? So let M be a maximum matching of G. By our assumption, it will have some vertices in X that are unsaturated, right? Not matched. So there exists some vertex U in X, at least one vertex, such that U is not is M exposed. I can use this terminology, right? It is M exposed. In other words, it is not matched by M. Right? Okay. So we have this vertex U. I'm going to draw my bipartite graph like this. This part is going to be X on the top, and the bottom is going to be Y. Okay? And I want to find this set here, S, so that its neighborhood is too small. It may or may not contain U. Let's not worry about that. Okay. What we are going to do is we are going to look at all the vertices we can reach from U by an M alternating path. So just to remind you, what does n, supposing M is the red colored matching. So let's see. Let's say M is red colored matching. Okay. So what does an M alternating path look like? We start from the vertex U. U is not matched, which means the first edge is going to be a black edge. In other words, it is not a red edge. Then if this vertex here is also not matched, then I would just add this edge to the matching and get a bigger matching. So that's a contradiction, right? This would be an M augmenting path, which means that this vertex will have to be matched, right? Okay. And then maybe I can find some other vertex to go to. But then again, this vertex will have to be matched, because otherwise this would be an M augmenting path, contradicting that M is a maximum matching, right? So then you come here. Okay. So supposing my X vertices are black colored and Y vertices are white colored. So let's say X is black, black, black. So what I'm saying is that all my paths will have to end at X. If a path ends at Y, then you will be able to find a matching edge there and extend it. Okay. Let's try to think about what it looks in the bipartite graph with respect to the bipartition. If my path starts here, I go to some vertex, then I get a matching edge, and I go here. Okay. At this point, I could stop. Maybe my path is a longest M alternating or a maximal M alternating path. Maybe not. In that case, I will again have some other vertex to go to. And then I will be able to take a matching edge and go back to this side. Okay. Is the idea clear? So this is what an M alternating path will look like, right? You go to Y, but then if you go to Y, you must go back to X, because otherwise you have an M augmenting path, right? So all the M alternating paths that start at U, they will have to end again in the same color class, X, right? They cannot end in Y. Okay. So this is an important observation. So what we are going to do is we are going to take Z as the set of all vertices, whether they are in X or in Y, that are reachable from U by an M alternating path, right? So all the vertices that I can reach from U, they are going to be in my set Z. Okay. So Z could have some vertices in, and notice that U belongs to Z, because the single vertex U is an M alternating path. So U is reachable from U, which makes sense intuitively, right? Okay. So Z is going to be some set, which is going to have some vertices in X and some vertices in Y. Okay. Good. And Okay, so already by the drawing I have made, you kind of see where I'm going. So this is going to be, let's say this is Z intersection X and this is Z intersection Y. Okay, so I want to claim that the neighbor, first of all, I want to claim that the neighborhood of Z intersection X is exactly the set Z intersection Y. Okay, that is one thing I want to claim. And another thing I want to convince you of is that the cardinality of Z intersection Y is exact plus 1 is exactly equal to the cardinality of Z intersection X. Okay, these are the two claims I want to convince you of. And if these two hold, then observe that we are done. Let S be the set Z intersection X, and now we are done, because the neighborhood of S is smaller than the size of S, and so S is a deficient set. Okay, so we are going to set this to be our set S. Okay, is everybody convinced that if we prove this claim, then we are done? Okay, if there are any questions regarding this, please raise them now. Otherwise, we'll proceed to prove this claim. Okay, good. All right, so let me make the rest of the vertices. Let me draw them. Let me put them here. So this is Z bar being the complement of Z, intersection Y, and this is Z bar intersection X. Okay, this should remind you, well, it's reminiscent of what we did when we were studying cuts. We had two cuts and we were taking the symmetric difference. It's a bit like that. You get these 4 different sets. Okay, so why is it that there cannot be any edges? So what does the first claim mean? It means that there are no edges from here to here, because I'm claiming that the neighborhood of Z intersection X is exactly the set Z intersection Y, right? Which basically is the same as saying that there are no edges from the top left to the bottom right. Okay, why? Can anybody tell me why there are no edges? So proof. There are no edges from the top left Z intersection X to Z bar intersection Y. Can someone explain why this is true? It creates an augmenting path contradicting the maximality. Exactly. So yeah, so you're right. So let's see why. Supposing there is some edge like this. Okay. Now, what we know is that Z is a set of vertices that you can reach from U by M alternating paths, right? Which means this vertex, let's call it, I don't know, S. No, let me not call it S. Let me call it V1 and V2. Okay, fine. What we know is that V1 is reachable from U by an M alternating path, right? So that path looks like this, something like this. Then you have a red colored edge, then you have a black colored edge, and then maybe you get to the vertex V1. But now if there was an edge from V1 to V2, well, then V2 is also reachable from U by an M alternating path. Add the edge to the path. Add the edge v1, v2 to the path that you already have, right? So then v2 should have been in Z by the definition. Another way of looking at it is what Anand said. If this was the case, then you have an M augmenting path, but M is a maximum matching. So you can't have an M augmenting path, right? Okay, great. So this means that there are no edges from V1 to V2 or from the top left to the bottom right set. Okay. And also observe that every vertex in Z intersection Y is going to be adjacent with some vertex in Z intersection X. Because you take a path and you look at this path and you will see that there is some neighbor of the vertex. So what I'm trying to say is, if you take any vertex here in Z intersection Y, it will definitely have some neighbor in Z intersection X. Because you take a path and now there will be a matching edge which will go to the other side. Okay. So every vertex in Z intersection Y has a neighbor in Z intersection X, and plus there are no edges from the top left to the bottom right. That means that the bottom left Z intersection Y is exactly the neighborhood of Z intersection X. Okay. Another way of visualizing this phenomenon is that the graph looks like this. All your edges go like this, or like this, or like this. It looks like an N shape, but I made the drawing differently. So it looks like an inverted N. Okay. And this kind of N shape will appear many times in bipartite matchings. Okay. So okay. So claim 1 is proved. I didn't write down the proof, but done. Okay. And now claim 2. I want to claim that the number of vertices in this set is exactly 1 less than the number of vertices in the top left set. Does anybody see why? How would you convince someone that the number of vertices in Z intersection Y is exactly 1 less than the number of vertices in Z intersection X? Exactly. So every vertex in Z intersection Y is matched to a vertex in Z intersection X, right? In fact, what you can do is you can think about what the matching looks like. The matching is going to look exactly like this, permuting the vertices to make the drawing nice. And the remaining matching is going to be on the other side. I'm not saying that the whole matching is in Z. There could be other edges which are on the other side. It could look something like this, for instance. Maybe this is your maximum matching and you are not able to match the remaining vertices. Okay. Notice that this is what the matching is going to look like, because every time you reach a vertex in Z intersection Y, you will be able to take a matching edge to go back to Z intersection X. Right? I'm not writing out all the arguments, so I'll leave those details to you. Okay. So every time you get there, you will be able to take a matching edge to get to Z intersection X, which means that every vertex in Z intersection Y is matched with some vertex in Z intersection X. Right? And the vertices in Z intersection X, except for the vertex U, which is where we started our paths from, they are all going to be matched. Because if there was any unmatched vertex in Z intersection X apart from U, then you will get an M augmenting path. Right? So all the vertices in Z intersection X have to be matched with some vertex in Z intersection Y, except for U. And so you will have exactly one more vertex in Z intersection X than in Z intersection Y. Because of the vertex U, you get the extra vertex, right? Okay, so again, I'm not going to write down the details. Observe that each vertex in Z intersection X, Z intersection Y is matched with some vertex in Z intersection X. And that M saturates Z intersection X minus U. And these two facts imply that you have exactly one more vertex in Z intersection X than in Z intersection Y. Okay, good. So this is it, because we know that this claim completes the proof of Hall's theorem by setting S to be the top left set. You're done. Okay. Any questions or concerns at this point? Anything that's not clear? You would like me to go over it again? This idea of reachable vertices by M alternating paths turns out to be very useful in bipartite matchings. Okay, you'll probably see it again, or you might see it on the assignment. Okay, so I just want to make few comments on a more algorithmic way of looking at it, because here we are not exactly saying how you can construct the set Z, right? We are just defining the set Z. There is actually a very nice way to construct this set, which will remind you of breadth first search trees or depth first search trees. I think it's breadth first, doesn't matter. Okay, it will remind you of how you construct these search trees. So let's call this a more algorithmic viewpoint. We will talk about the algorithmic viewpoint only in bipartite matchings. Once we get to non-bipartite matchings, we won't even bother about it. So here is a way to construct the set Z. Right, you start with your vertex U. This is an unmatched vertex. So you look at all the neighbors of U. Okay. Maybe some 4 neighbors, I don't know. U is a black colored vertex, which means it is in X, and these are all in Y, right? Now, when you get to this level, so let's call these levels. This is level 0. This is, so we're going to construct a rooted tree. This is level 1, level 2, level 3, and so on. Okay. And maybe I will, yeah, so 0 belongs to X, 1 belongs to Y. So these will alternate, right? Because it's a bipartite graph. We are constructing a tree. So when I get to level 1, which is an odd number, I will get all these matching edges, which will take me to some vertex in level 2. Notice that every single vertex will have to be matched. Otherwise, you will have an M augmenting path, right? So using matching edges, red colored edges, you will be able to see 4 different vertices in this example. Okay. Now, when you get to level 2, which is an even level, you scan all the neighbors of these vertices, right? This is basically a breadth first search with some modification. So when you get to an odd level, you only look at the M edges. And when you get to an even level, you look at all neighbors not already visited. Okay. So when I do this, I will get some new neighbors, maybe like this. Maybe some of them will not have any new neighbors. Okay, it might look something like this. Now you're again at an odd level. So you are going to look at only the matching edges. And each of them will be matched with somebody, right? Let me do this again, right? And now you are again at black colored vertices. Okay. Supposing your process stops here, right? Maybe at this point, all of the neighbors of these vertices in level 4 are already in your tree. So what we are doing is we are constructing a tree. Construct a tree T, as I explained. Okay, you can call this an M alternating tree. That's the term generally used in algorithmic discussions. This is an M alternating tree. Okay. Maybe at this point, no more new neighbors to be found at some point. And this is your set Z. If you can't find any more neighbors at some even level, then you have found your entire set Z. Okay. And the Z intersection X are all the vertices in the even levels, and Z intersection Y are all the vertices in the odd levels. And you can see now easily, a bit more visually if you like, why there is exactly one more vertex in Z intersection X than in Z intersection Y. And that is your vertex U. Okay. So this is an algorithmic way of constructing your set Z. Okay. And basically, it also can give you an algorithm for finding a maximum matching in a bipartite graph. So you can, you may use this idea to construct or find a maximum matching in a bipartite graph. Of course, the point is to find it efficiently, or if you like, in polynomial time. Okay. And you can also use this to see how the set Z is constructed. And this is another way you could argue the proof of the claims that we proved, right? If you like this more visual way of thinking, then you can go with that. Are there any questions or concerns regarding what we have done so far? Is it clear how we are constructing this M alternating tree? Okay, good. All right, so we have answered our original question. We know exactly when a bipartite graph has a perfect matching. In fact, we have answered something more general. We know exactly when a bipartite graph has a matching that saturates one color class or the other color class, right? Great. And we will discuss, as I mentioned, we are calling this module bipartite matchings and edge colorings because bipartite matchings have a lot of applications, including theoretical applications within graph theory. So you can prove most of the results in edge colorings, or at least the results we are going to focus on in this course. We are going to prove them using bipartite matchings. That is the approach taken in the text as well, and I'm following the same approach. Okay, so I want to discuss some applications. Okay. So here is an application of Hall's theorem. Right. So if you were to sample a few regular graphs, I'm not making a concrete statement here as in a probabilistic, precise probabilistic statement, but if you look at the standard examples of regular graphs, right? For instance, this guy. Or even cycles. You will see that these tend to have perfect matchings. Many of these examples have perfect matchings. Of course, odd cycles don't have perfect matchings, but we know odd cycles are strange. They come up in many theorems, right? But a lot of regular graphs, or a lot of examples of regular graphs that we see, for instance, the Peterson graph and so on, they turn to have perfect matchings. So is it true that all regular graphs have perfect matchings? Clearly, you will need your graph to have an even number of vertices, right? Okay. Supposing you have a regular graph that has an even number of vertices, right? So odd cycles are out. They don't have an even number of vertices. But then the question is, do all regular graphs with an even number of vertices have perfect matchings? Right. Turns out the answer is no. You can construct examples of regular graphs that don't have perfect matchings. But it turns out that all of these examples are non-bipartite. Actually, bipartite ones, the answer is yes. And that can be proved easily using Hall's theorem. So let me give you an example of a regular graph that does not have a perfect matching. In fact, we'll come back to this example later as well. So here is a nice three regular graph that does not have a perfect matching. A three regular graph that has no perfect matching. Does anybody see why? Does anybody see why this graph does not have a perfect matching? Does anybody see an easy explanation for why this graph does not have a perfect matching? There is a cut vertex and each component has odd number of vertices. Yes. If you, okay, so, right. So I won't even talk about components. If you look at this vertex, maybe I will. Let's remove this vertex. Consider the graph G minus V. This graph has three components: 1, 2, and 3. Each of these has an odd number of vertices, which means in any perfect matching, each of these will have to match at least one vertex with the cut vertex, because you can't match an odd number of vertices among themselves. So each of these will need to match at least one vertex with V. And that is just not possible, right? One of them can match a vertex with V, but then the other two, they can't by the definition of a matching. Okay. So this is a concept, this is an observation we'll come back to when we go to the next module, non-bipartite matchings, because note that this is a non-bipartite graph. Okay. But I want to tell you an interesting fact, which we will also prove in the next module, is that three regular graphs actually they do have a perfect matching if you just increase the connectivity, and all you need is two edge connected. So fact, every three regular two edge connected graph has a perfect matching. This will prove in the next module. Okay, because this is about all graphs. This is not about bipartite graphs. What we will prove in this module is that every regular bipartite graph has a perfect matching. Okay, so theorem, actually they call it corollary, sure. Corollary 16.6 is that every regular bipartite graph has a perfect matching. You know what? Now that I think a bit more about it, this is actually quite easy. I think you should prove it on your own. So this would be a good exercise to apply Hall's theorem. So I will actually leave it to you. Do it yourself. Apply Hall's theorem. Okay. So that's an application of Hall's theorem. And tomorrow we will continue our discussion on bipartite matchings. In particular, we will ask the question, how would you convince someone that a given matching is maximum? Or in other words, can you derive nice upper bounds on the cardinality of maximum matching? In other words, alpha prime of G, the matching number. Okay, so tomorrow we'll continue our discussion, and the question is, how do you convince someone that a matching is indeed maximum for bipartite graphs? Okay, good. So that's all for today. Are there any questions or concerns? Try proving this on your own. It's not too difficult. It's quite straightforward counting argument. Yeah. Yes, I'm here for another 5 minutes or so. Please feel free to ask any questions. Also, someone in the beginning asked me about next semester's course, so I'll just make a comment. I was hoping to offer linear programming and combinatorial optimization, but it may be a bit late to introduce a new elective. So there is a chance that I'll offer the same course, structural graph theory, next semester. And I will try to offer the new elective in the January 2022 semester. Okay. So that's likely, that's what is going to happen likely. Okay, so maybe I'll stop recording. and I'll still be here for a few minutes.